The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a deep rumble that echoed through the vast hall. Captain Jake Morrison walked inside, his black uniform crisp and his face calm despite the tension in the air. Behind him followed Admiral Lisa Carter, her silver hair pulled back in a tight bun and her green eyes sharp as she surveyed the room. The chamber was enormous, bigger than any building on Earth. Hundreds of alien beings sat in curved rows that stretched up toward a domed ceiling painted with stars. Each species had their own section, and each section buzzed with different sounds, clicks, whistles, growls, and musical tones that humans could barely understand. At the center of it all sat the High Chancellor, Lord Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire. His body looked like living crystal, tall and thin, with light flowing through him in patterns that changed with his mood. Right now, those patterns were sharp and angry, cutting through his transparent form like lightning. Jake took his seat in the small human section, feeling very alone among all these powerful alien races. The humans had only been part of the Galactic Council for 50 years, while some of these species had been here for thousands. Next to him, Admiral Carter sat straight and proud, but Jake could see the worry in her eyes. Lord Vextar raised one, crystal in hand, and the chamber fell silent. His voice rang out like singing glass, translated into every language by the universal communicators everyone wore. "We gather today to address a serious problem," he announced. "The human species has broken our laws. They have taken worlds that do not belong to them. They have built colonies where they were not invited. They have grown too fast and too far." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some aliens nodded their agreement, while others made sounds that Jake had learned meant displeasure. The Krillian section was the loudest, their six-armed bodies waving in agitation. General Thax of the Krillian military stood up, his massive form casting shadows across the lower seats. He was nearly 8 feet tall with thick gray skin and eyes like black holes. When he spoke, his voice was like grinding stone. "The humans are dangerous," he declared, his 6 fists pounding the air. "In 50 years they have built 300 colonies. They have a fleet of warships that grows every day. They make weapons and train soldiers constantly. They are preparing for war." Jake wanted to stand up and argue, but Admiral Carter placed a gentle hand on his arm. She shook her head slightly, telling him to wait. Jake bit his tongue and listened, as more aliens spoke against humanity. Lady Sinara of the Etherian Collective rose next. She was beautiful in an alien way, with skin that seemed to shift between silver and blue, and long flowing hair that moved like water. Her voice was musical, but her words were sharp. "The humans claim they are peaceful," she said, her tone almost sad. "But their actions tell a different story. They build military bases on every world they touch. They train their children to be soldiers. They study our weapons and our ships. This is not the behavior of a peaceful species." More aliens stood to speak. The Vorthan's supreme commander, Karthok, was a massive reptilian creature with scales that looked like armor. He spoke, in a deep, rumbling voice, about human expansion into traditional Vorthan territory. The Aquarian delegate, a being of pure energy contained in a special suit, flickered with angry colors as it described human colonies near their sacred star systems. One by one, they painted a picture of humanity as aggressive, dangerous, and growing too powerful too quickly. Jake listened to every word, knowing that most of it was true, but not understanding the real reason why. Finally, Lord Vextar called for silence again. His crystalline form pulsed with official patterns as he prepared to deliver the Council's decision. "The Galactic Council has reached a unanimous decision," he announced. "The human species will have 30 standard days to withdraw from all disputed territories. They will also submit to galactic oversight of their military forces. All human warships will be registered and monitored. All human colonies in contested space will be abandoned." Jake felt his heart sink. This wasn't just about territories. This was about making humanity a second-class species, forever watched and controlled by their alien neighbors. "If the humans refuse these terms," Lord Vextar continued, "the allied species fleet will take action. We have 8,000 warships ready to enforce this decision. The humans have 300. The choice is theirs." The chamber erupted in sound as aliens from dozens of species voiced their approval. Jake looked around at the sea of alien faces, some friendly, some hostile, all of them united in their belief that humanity needed to be put in its place. Admiral Carter finally stood up. The chamber gradually fell quiet as everyone waited to hear the human response. She was small compared to most of the aliens around her, but she carried herself with a dignity that commanded respect. "We have heard the Council's decision," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "We will take your words back to Earth and discuss them with our government. You will have our answer within the 30-day limit." General Thax laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "What is there to discuss? You have 300 ships, we have 8,000. You will surrender, or you will be destroyed." "Admiral," Carter smiled, and Jake saw something in that smile that made him shiver. It wasn't fear or resignation, it was something else entirely. "General Thax," she said calmly, "you are correct that we have much to discuss. We will be in touch." As the formal session ended, Jake and Admiral Carter made their way out of the chamber. The walk seemed to take forever, with alien eyes following them every step of the way. Some of those eyes held pity, as if the watchers felt sorry for a species that was about to be crushed. Others held hunger, as if their owners were already planning how to divide up human territory. In the transport back to their ship, Jake finally spoke. "Admiral, what are we going to do? They're right about the numbers. 8,000 ships against 300. That's not a battle. That's a massacre." Admiral Carter looked out the viewport at the stars. Her smile was still there, small and mysterious. "Jake, how long have you been in the diplomatic service?" 15 years, ma'am. "And in all that time, have you ever wondered why Earth's military is so secretive about certain things? Why there are bases that don't appear on any public records? Why some of our officers disappear for years at a time on classified assignments?" Jake frowned. He had wondered about those things, but he had always assumed it was normal military security. "The galaxy is about to learn something," Admiral Carter said quietly. "Something that will change everything. The Council thinks they know humanity's strength, but they've only seen what we wanted them to see." As their ship prepared to jump to hyperspace, Jake stared out at the massive alien fleet assembling near the Council station. Thousands of ships from dozens of species, all preparing to teach humanity a lesson about power and respect. Back on Earth, President Helen Davis received the transmission from Admiral Carter in her private office deep beneath the White House. After reading the message, she reached for a secure communication device that had been sitting unused in her desk drawer for her entire presidency. The device connected her to people and places that officially didn't exist, to programs that had been running in secret for longer than most people had been alive. When the voice answered on the other end, she spoke just 4 words. "It's time," she said. "Wake them up." Across the galaxy, in the empty spaces between stars, ancient systems began to activate. Computers that had been sleeping for decades started running programs that had been written by engineers who were now dead. Ships that had been drifting in the void for years began the slow process of coming back to life. The galaxy thought it knew humanity's strength. Soon it would learn how wrong it had been. Dr. Marcus Webb walked through the long concrete tunnel deep beneath Cheyenne Mountain. His footsteps echoed in the silence as he made his way to a door that most people didn't even know existed. The heavy metal door had no markings, no signs, nothing to tell anyone what lay behind it. Marcus pressed his hand against a scanner and waited as red light swept across his palm. The door opened with a soft hiss, revealing an elevator that went down much deeper than any public record showed. Marcus stepped inside and pressed the only button. The elevator dropped for what felt like forever, taking him to levels that were built long before he was born. When the doors opened again, Marcus found himself in a room filled with filing cabinets that stretched from floor to ceiling. The air smelled old and dusty, like secrets that had been kept too long. Colonel Ray Foster was waiting for him, a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes who had been keeping these secrets for most of his adult life. "Are you ready for this, Marcus?" Ray asked. His voice was quiet, almost sad. "Once you know the truth, you can never go back to not knowing." Marcus nodded. As Earth's top expert on alien archaeology, He had security clearance higher than most generals, but even he had never been allowed down here before. Today was different. Today, humanity needed to remember its real history. Ray led him to a specific cabinet and pulled out a thick folder marked with dates from over 200 years ago. Inside were photographs, documents, and reports that told a story the world had never heard. It didn't start 50 years ago, Ray said, opening the folder. First contact happened in 1847. A ship crashed in the Nevada desert, far from any towns or settlements. The beings inside were dying, but they lived long enough to tell us their story. Marcus stared at the old photographs. They showed wreckage that was clearly not from Earth. Pieces of metal and strange devices scattered across the desert sand. In one photo, he could see the bodies of alien beings, thin and graceful, with large eyes that looked almost human. They were refugees, Ray continued. Their planet had been destroyed by the Krillian Empire. These beings were the last of their kind, and they were trying to find somewhere safe to live, but their ship was too damaged. They never made it. The next photographs showed something that made Marcus's hands shake. Human scientists and military officers were working with the aliens, learning from them in the days before they died. The images were grainy and old, but he could see humans taking notes, copying down symbols, studying alien technology. They shared everything with us, Ray said. Their language, their science, their history. They told us about the galaxy, about the empires and wars and politics out there among the stars, and they warned us about what would happen when the galaxy found Earth. Marcus turned the page and saw technical drawings that looked impossibly advanced for the 1800s. Designs for engines that bent space and time, weapons that could destroy planets, shields that could stop any attack. At the bottom of each page were signatures from human engineers who had died more than a century ago. We've been preparing ever since, Ray said. Every generation, we've passed the knowledge down to the next. We've been building ships, training crews, getting ready for the day when we would need to defend ourselves. Colonel Ray opened another folder, this one filled with more recent documents. Maps of space that showed star systems no human was supposed to know about, lists of names and dates going back decades, construction schedules for projects that officially didn't exist. The ships weren't built on Earth, Ray explained. We couldn't risk that. They were built in space, in hidden shipyards that moved from system to system. Each generation of workers finished their part and then trained the next generation to continue. Marcus looked at the construction records. Hundreds of ships, each one more advanced than anything in the public fleet. Ships with names like Leviathan, Destiny, Phoenix, and Titan. Ships that had been launched years ago and were now waiting somewhere in the darkness between stars. How many people know about this? Marcus asked. Not many, Ray admitted. A few, 100 on Earth. The crews of the hidden ships, some politicians and military leaders. Everyone else thinks we're just another young species trying to find our place in the galaxy. The door to the archive room opened and Admiral Lisa Carter walked in. She looked tired from her trip back from the Galactic Council, but her eyes were bright with purpose. Marcus, she said, nodding to him. Ray's been filling you in? Some of it, Marcus replied. But I still don't understand the scale of this. How many ships are we talking about? Admiral Carter smiled the same mysterious smile she had worn in the council chamber. 4,216 ships, each one more powerful than anything the galaxy has ever seen. Marcus felt his legs go weak. He sat down heavily, in a nearby chair, trying to process what he was hearing. The galaxy thought humanity had 300 ships. The real number was more than 4,000. The technology we learned from those refugees in 1847, Admiral Carter continued, we've had 2 centuries to improve on it. Our ships don't just use fusion engines like the ones the galaxy knows about. They use quantum displacement drives that can fold space and time. They have weapons that can fire across multiple dimensions. They have shields that work by shifting into parallel realities. Ray pulled out another folder, this one containing crew records, thousands of names, people who had volunteered to spend years of their lives sleeping in space, waiting for a signal that might never come. Every person on those ships volunteered. Ray said. They knew they might spend decades in cryosleep. They knew they might never wake up, but they also knew that someday Earth might need them. Admiral Carter walked to a wall covered with star charts. Red dots marked the positions of human colonies that everyone knew about. Blue dots showed the positions of the hidden fleet. Marcus counted the blue dots and realized they surrounded every major alien empire in the galaxy. We've been watching them, Admiral Carter said. Learning their tactics, studying their weaknesses, positioning our ships where they could do the most good if war ever came. The aliens think they know how humans fight because they've seen our public fleet in small battles. They have no idea what we're really capable of. Marcus looked at the dates on some of the files, ships that had been launched when he was still in school, crews that had been in cryosleep since before the current galactic crisis began. Captain Danny Clark has been sleeping aboard the Leviathan for 43 years, Admiral Carter said, pointing to one of the blue dots on the chart. Lieutenant Commander Amy Stevens went into cryosleep on her 25th birthday. She's technically still 25, but the rest of us have aged 15 years since then. The weight of it all began to sink in. Generations of humans had worked on this project, living their lives in secret, building something that could save their species. People had given up normal lives, normal families, normal careers to sleep in space and wait for a war that everyone hoped would never come. Why? Show me this now, Marcus asked. Because in 3 weeks we're going to wake them up, Admiral Carter replied. All of them. 4,000 ships and their crews are going to come online for the first time. And when they do, the galaxy is going to learn that humanity is not the weak young species they thought we were. Ray closed the folders and put them back in their cabinet. The aliens are already moving their fleets into position. 8,000 ships from dozens of different species, all coming to teach humanity a lesson about power. Admiral Carter walked toward the elevator. They're about to learn that lesson, all right, but they're not going to like what they discover. As they rode the elevator back to the surface, Marcus thought about all the people who had kept this secret for 200 years. Engineers who had died without ever seeing their work completed. Soldiers who had volunteered for a mission that might last their entire lives. Politicians who had made decisions that would affect generations they would never meet. When they reached the surface, the sun was setting over the mountains. In a few hours, Admiral Carter would send the activation codes to 4,000 ships scattered across the galaxy. Crews that had been sleeping for decades would wake up to find that their time had finally come. The galaxy thought it was about to crush a weak young species. Instead, it was about to meet the most dangerous military force that had ever existed. And humanity had been planning for this moment since before any of the current alien leaders were even born. Captain Danny Clark felt cold. Very cold. The first thing he noticed was the taste of metal in his mouth and the feeling of thick liquid draining away from his body. Slowly, his eyes opened to see bright white lights above him. The cryo-sleep chamber was opening and he was waking up for the first time in 43 years. A gentle voice spoke to him through speakers built into the chamber. Good morning, Captain Clark. Today is March 15th, 2387. You have been in cryosleep for 43 years, 2 months, and 16 days. The activation code Omega-7 has been received. Please remain calm while your body adjusts. Danny tried to sit up, but his muscles felt weak and shaky. This was normal after long-term cryosleep. He had trained for this moment his entire adult life, but nothing could really prepare someone for waking up after sleeping for decades. Around him, other cryo chambers were opening. His crew of 200 specialists were all waking up at the same time. Some were coughing as the cryo fluid drained from their lungs. Others were trying to speak but could only make weak sounds. Everyone looked older than they should, even though cryosleep slowed aging. 43 years was a long time, even in deep freeze. Lieutenant Commander Amy Stevens was in the chamber next to his. She had been 25 when she went to sleep. Now she looked about 30, her brown hair longer than regulations allowed and her face pale from the long sleep. But her eyes were alert and focused as she looked at the status displays around her chamber. Captain, she said, her voice rough, but determined. All systems show green. The ship is healthy and ready for action. Danny slowly stood up, holding onto the side of his chamber for support. Through the large windows of the cryo bay, he could see stars. The same stars he had been looking at 43 years ago when he first went to sleep. The UES Leviathan had been drifting here in empty space all this time, waiting for this moment. "Computer," Danny said, his voice getting stronger. "Show me the current situation." A large screen on the wall came to life, showing a map of local space. Danny's heart began to beat faster as he saw what was happening. Thousands of alien ships were moving toward human space. The Allied species fleet was huge, bigger than any military force he had ever seen. But there were other things on the screen that made him smile. Blue dots were appearing all over the galaxy. The hidden human fleet was waking up. Ships that had been sleeping in the dark for decades were coming online. The Destiny, the Phoenix, the Titan, the Thunder, names he knew by heart were lighting up one by one. "How many ships are active?" he asked. 3,847 ships have responded to the activation code, the computer replied. "More are coming online every minute. Total fleet strength will be 4,216 vessels within 6 hours. Danny felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cryo-sleep. Even he hadn't known the final numbers. During his training, they had told him the fleet would be large, but this was beyond anything he had imagined. Amy was running diagnostics on their weapon systems. The Leviathan was one of the largest ships in the hidden fleet, a massive dreadnought that could fight an entire enemy fleet by itself. Its main weapons were quantum displacement cannons that could fire projectiles through multiple dimensions at the same time. No shield in the galaxy could stop them because they hit targets from directions that didn't exist in normal space. "Weapons are online and ready," Amy reported. "Quantum drives are charging. We can be anywhere in the galaxy in less than an hour." All across human space, similar scenes were playing out. Captain Beth Hayes was waking up aboard the UES Thunder, a ship designed for hit-and-run attacks that could appear anywhere without warning and disappear just as quickly. Commander Steve Miller was coming online aboard the Phoenix, a ship whose job was to coordinate attacks from multiple fleets at once. Each ship had been built for a specific purpose. Some were designed to fight big battles against large enemy fleets. Others were meant to slip behind enemy lines and destroy supply bases. Still others were equipped with technology that could jam enemy communications across entire star systems. But they all shared one thing in common. Every ship in the hidden fleet was more advanced than anything the aliens had ever seen. While the galaxy had been building bigger and stronger versions of the same old technology, humanity had been developing completely new ways to fight wars in space. The alien fleets moving toward human space were impressive by galactic standards. The Zephyrian crystal ships could fire energy beams that could cut through the armor of normal vessels like paper. The Krillian war spheres were covered in weapons and shields that had never been defeated in battle. The Vortan dreadnoughts were so large they had their own gravity fields and could crush smaller ships just by getting too close. Lord Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crystal Throne, watching his fleet move into position. 8,000 ships from 27 different species, the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. The humans had nowhere to run and no way to fight back. This would be over quickly. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're detecting some unusual energy readings from various locations around the galaxy." "Explain," Lord Vexitar ordered, his crystalline body pulsing with curiosity. "Ships, sir. Lots of ships. They're appearing on sensors in positions we didn't expect. The readings don't match any known human vessel designs. General Thax was having similar problems aboard his command sphere. His sensors were showing human ships in places where no human ships should be. Worse, these vessels were using technology that his computers couldn't identify. How did they get so many ships into position without us detecting them?" He growled to his staff. "Our intelligence said the humans had 300 vessels. I'm seeing readings for thousands of ships." Supreme Commander Karthok was the first to understand what was happening. His massive reptilian brain had been studying human behavior for decades, and something about this situation felt wrong. The humans had been too calm at the Galactic Council meeting. Admiral Carter had been too confident. No species facing complete destruction would be that relaxed, unless they had a very good reason. "All fleets halt your advance," he ordered. "Something is not right here. Scan all space around human territories. look for cloaked ships, hidden bases, anything we might have missed. But it was too late for scanning. The human fleet was already in position. Danny stood on the bridge of the Leviathan, now wearing his uniform and feeling strong after medical treatment to reverse the effects of long cryo-sleep. Around him, his crew worked at stations they hadn't touched in over 40 years, but their training was coming back quickly. "Captain," Amy reported from her weapons station, "we have targeting locks on 47 enemy vessels. Quantum displacement cannons are charged and ready." "Wait for the signal," Danny ordered. "Admiral Carter will tell us when to begin." Throughout the galaxy, similar conversations were happening on 4,000 human ships. Crews that had been sleeping for decades were now wide awake and ready for the fight they had been preparing for their entire lives. The alien fleets suddenly found themselves surrounded. Ships that had been invisible were now appearing on every sensor. Human vessels were emerging from positions that should have been impossible to reach without being detected. Some of the hidden ships had been waiting inside asteroid fields. Others had been drifting in the empty space between star systems. Still others had been hiding behind moons and planets, using gravitational fields to mask their presence. "This is impossible," Lord Vextar said, his crystal form flickering with disbelief. "Where did all these ships come from?" The answer was simple, but no one in the alien fleets understood it yet. Humanity had been planning this moment for over 200 years. While other species had been fighting wars and building empires, humans had been quietly preparing for the day when they would need to defend themselves against the entire galaxy. That day had finally arrived. The ancient fleet was awake, and nothing would ever be the same again. Admiral Lisa Carter stood on the bridge of the UES Destiny, looking out at Earth through the massive viewing window. The blue and green planet hung peacefully in space, but she knew that in a few minutes, everything would change. Not just for Earth, but for the entire galaxy. Behind her, communication officers were setting up equipment that could broadcast to every inhabited world in known space. This message would reach billions of beings across hundreds of different species. What she was about to say would be heard by emperors and farmers, soldiers and scientists, leaders and common people everywhere. "Admiral," Captain Jake Morrison said, standing beside her. He had arrived from the diplomatic ship just hours earlier. "Are you sure about this? Once we reveal the truth, there's no going back." Lisa nodded, her face calm but determined. "Jake, we've been hiding for 200 years. We've let other species think we're weak so we could avoid this exact situation. But they forced our hand. Now they need to learn who they're really dealing with." The communication officer spoke up. "Admiral, we're ready to broadcast. The signal will reach every major world in the galaxy within 30 minutes. Lisa straightened her uniform and walked to the center of the bridge. Behind her, Earth filled the viewing window, a reminder of what she was fighting to protect. Camera drones moved into position to record her message. "Begin transmission," she ordered. Far across the galaxy, on hundreds of worlds, emergency broadcasts interrupted regular programming. In the Zephyrian capital, Lord Vextar was meeting with his war council when every screen in the room suddenly showed the image of a human woman in a military uniform. "People of the galaxy," Lisa began, her voice clear and strong. "I am Admiral Lisa Carter of the Earth Defense Force. 3 weeks ago, your leaders delivered an ultimatum to humanity. They demanded that we withdraw from territories we have legally settled and submit to galactic oversight of our military forces." On the Krillian homeworld, General Thax was reviewing battle plans when the broadcast began. His 6 eyes focused on the human admiral with growing confusion. This wasn't the message of surrender he had expected. "We reject this ultimatum completely," Lisa continued. "Humanity will not abandon our colonies. We will not submit to oversight by species who threaten us with destruction. We will not bow down to empires that believe might makes right." In the crystal cities of the Zephyrian Empire, billions of beings watched in surprise. No young species had ever spoken to the galaxy with such confidence. Even established powers rarely challenged the major empires so directly. "But I want you to understand something," Lisa said, her voice becoming harder. "When you threatened Earth, you made a serious mistake. You assumed you knew humanity's true strength. You assumed we were weak because that's what we wanted you to think. Supreme. Commander Karthok felt a chill run down his massive spine. He was beginning to understand that his fleet might be in serious danger. For over 2 centuries, humanity has been preparing for this day. We've been building ships in secret, training crews in hidden bases, developing weapons that your scientists can't even imagine. While you thought you were dealing with a young species that had 300 primitive warships, the truth is very different. Lord Vextar's crystalline form began to crack as stress patterns ran through his body. His tactical displays were showing impossible readings. Human ships were appearing everywhere, far more than should exist. Computer, he ordered, confirm the number of human vessels currently detected. Current count is 3,912 ships and rising, the computer replied. All vessels are using unknown technology. Threat level cannot be calculated. On every world in the galaxy, people were watching in shock as Admiral Carter revealed humanity's greatest secret. Even humans on the outer colonies were learning the truth for the first time. The fleet you're seeing now, Lisa said, consists of 4,216 warships. Each one is more advanced than anything currently in service, with any galactic power. These ships have been waiting in the darkness between stars for decades, their crews in cryosleep, ready to defend Earth when the time came. General Thax was bellowing orders to his staff, trying to get better sensor readings on the human fleet. But his equipment couldn't make sense of what it was detecting. The human ships were using technology that operated on principles his people didn't understand. To prove we're not bluffing, Lisa said, we're going to give you a demonstration. She turned to her weapons officer. Signal the Leviathan. Tell Captain Clark he's authorized to fire on the target. Light years away, Captain Danny Clark received the order with grim satisfaction. Amy, target the asteroid in the Vega system. Single quantum displacement round. Lieutenant Commander Amy Stevens locked onto the massive space rock that had been chosen for this demonstration. It was uninhabited but large enough that its destruction would be visible from multiple star systems. Target locked, Captain. Quantum displacement cannon charged and ready. Fire. The Leviathan's main weapon discharged with a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The quantum displacement round traveled through multiple dimensions simultaneously, taking a path that didn't exist in normal space-time. When it hit the asteroid, something happened that had never been seen before in galactic history. The space rock didn't just explode, it ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not broken apart, but completely removed from reality across multiple dimensions. For several minutes, there was literally a hole in space where the asteroid had been. The demonstration was visible from dozens of nearby star systems. Alien observers watched in horror as a mountain-sized asteroid simply vanished from existence. No weapon in the galaxy could do such a thing. Even the most advanced civilizations had never seen anything like it. That asteroid, Admiral Carter announced to the galaxy, no longer exists in this universe or any parallel universe. Our quantum displacement weapons can remove targets from reality itself. Shields cannot stop them because they attack from dimensions that most species don't even know exist. Panic began to spread through the alien fleets. Commanders who had been confident of victory minutes earlier were now questioning whether they should retreat. Some of the smaller species were already ordering their ships to withdraw from the Allied fleet. Lady Sinara of the Etherian Collective watched the demonstration from her flagship and felt her people's famous composure crack. The Etherians prided themselves on their advanced sensors and scientific knowledge, but they had never detected the human fleet until now. How is this possible? She asked her science officer. Our sensors are the best in the galaxy. How did thousands of ships hide from us for so long? Unknown, my lady. The human vessels appear to be using some form of quantum stealth technology that operates outside known physical laws. Back on Earth, President Helen Davis was watching the broadcast from her Situation Room deep beneath the White House. Around, her military advisors and government officials sat in stunned silence as they learned the truth about their own species' capabilities. Madam President, her chief of staff whispered, "Did you know about this?" "Some of it," she replied quietly. "But not the full scale. Nobody outside the program knew how large the fleet really was." Admiral Carter's voice continued to echo across the galaxy. To the leaders of the Allied fleet currently threatening Earth, you have a choice to make. You can withdraw your ships and return to your territories, or you can test your 8,000 vessels against our 4,000. But understand this. Every ship in our fleet can do what you just saw the Leviathan do. Supreme Commander Karthok was the first major leader to make a decision. His massive reptilian brain had done the calculations, and the numbers were terrifying. Even if his fleet could defeat the humans, the cost would be enormous. And there was no guarantee they could win at all. All Vorthan vessels, he ordered, begin withdrawal to safe distance. Do not approach human ships. Do not take any hostile action. His decision started a chain reaction. Within hours, half the Allied fleet was pulling back from human space. Some species withdrew completely, deciding that this fight was no longer worth the risk. Others maintained their positions but stopped their advance. Lord Vextar and General Thax held out the longest, their pride making it hard to accept that they had been so completely outmaneuvered. But even they eventually had to face reality. The human fleet wasn't just larger than expected. It was using technology that made traditional space warfare obsolete. On the bridge of the Destiny, Admiral Carter watched as alien fleets across the galaxy began to withdraw. The demonstration had achieved exactly what she had hoped. Fear was often more effective than actual violence. "Jake," she said to Captain Morrison, "prepare a message to the Galactic Council. Tell them we're ready to discuss new terms for humanity's place in galactic civilization. But this time, we'll be negotiating as equals." As news of humanity's revelations spread across the galaxy, one thing became clear to every species. The young race from Earth was not the weak civilization they had appeared to be. They were something far more dangerous, a species that had learned to appear weak while becoming incredibly strong. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. The Galactic Council chamber looked very different now. Where once alien delegates had sat with confidence and pride, now they shifted nervously in their seats and spoke in quiet, careful voices. The massive hall that had echoed with threats just weeks earlier was now filled with a tense, respectful silence. Dr. Marcus Webb walked to the center of the chamber, carrying a folder that contained 200 years of human history the galaxy had never known. His role as Earth's top expert on alien cultures made him the perfect person to explain what humanity had learned about galactic civilization during their long period of secret observation. "Honored delegates," Marcus began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "3 weeks ago, you delivered an ultimatum to humanity based on what you thought you knew about our species. Today, I want to tell you what we know about yours." Lord Vextar sat very still in his crystal throne, the light patterns in his body dim and subdued. The cracks in his form from the shock of humanity's revelation had been repaired, but everyone could see that his confidence had not recovered. "For 2 centuries, Marcus continued, humanity has been studying each of your civilizations. We know your histories, your strengths, your weaknesses, and most importantly, your patterns of behavior. We learned early that galactic politics is based on fear and dominance. The strong threaten the weak, and the weak submit or are destroyed. General Lai." Thax made a low growling sound but didn't interrupt. His 6 arms were folded across his chest and his black eyes watched Marcus with grudging respect. The Krillian military commander had lost half his fleet when ships started deserting after humanity's demonstration. "We could have revealed our true strength decades ago," Marcus said. "We could have demanded respect through force as most species do. But we chose a different path. We chose to appear weak while we became strong, hoping that someday we could find a way to join galactic civilization peacefully." Lady Sinara of the Etherian Collective leaned forward in her seat. Her beautiful, shifting features showed genuine curiosity. "Dr. Webb, if humanity has been so much stronger than us all along, why didn't you simply conquer us? Your technology clearly surpasses ours. You could have ruled the galaxy if you wanted." Marcus smiled sadly. "Because ruling through fear creates enemies, not friends. Look around this chamber. How many species here truly trust each other? How many alliances are based on mutual respect rather than mutual threats? Humanity studied your galactic civilization for 200 years, and we learned that it's built on a foundation of fear that makes everyone weaker. Captain Jake Morrison, sitting in the human delegation area, watched as alien delegates began to shift uncomfortably. Marcus was speaking truths that many species preferred not to think about. The Zephyrian Empire controls dozens of worlds, Marcus continued, but only because smaller species fear your crystal fleets. The Krillian military dominates 3 sectors, but your subject races obey only because they remember what happened to worlds that resisted. The Vorthon hegemony rules through the threat of their massive dreadnoughts. All of you have built your power on making others afraid. Supreme Commander Karthok, the massive reptilian leader, spoke for the first time since the session began. His deep voice rumbled through the chamber. Dr. Webb, that is how the galaxy has always worked. The strong lead, the weak follow. This is the natural order. Is it? Marcus asked. Because humanity has a different idea. We believe that true strength comes not from the ability to destroy others, but from the wisdom to help them become stronger too. Admiral Lisa Carter stood up from her seat. She had arrived at the council station that morning aboard the UES Destiny, which was now visible through the chamber's windows as a reminder of humanity's hidden power. The galaxy is about to change, she announced. The old system of threats and fear has created nothing but centuries of war and mistrust. Humanity offers something different. We offer genuine partnership between equals. She activated a holographic display that showed a map of the galaxy beyond its current borders. Vast regions of unexplored space stretched out in all directions, filled with countless stars and potentially habitable worlds. There's an entire universe out there, Admiral Carter said. Billions of star systems that no one has ever visited. Worlds that could support life. Resources that could benefit everyone. Discoveries that could advance all our civilizations. Instead of fighting over the same territories we've been squabbling about for millennia, we could work together to explore these new regions. The chamber erupted in excited murmurs as delegates realized what she was suggesting. The current galactic civilization occupied only a tiny fraction of the galaxy. There was room for everyone to expand and grow without competing for the same worlds. President Helen Davis appeared on the main viewing screen, broadcasting from Earth. Her image was clear and her voice strong as she addressed the council. Today, humanity announces the formation of the Galactic Exploration Initiative, she said. Any species that wants to join us in peaceful exploration of the galaxy beyond our current borders will be welcome as equal partners. We will share our technology, our knowledge, and our protection with any civilization that commits to cooperation, instead of conquest. Lady Sinara was the first to respond. The Etherian leader stood gracefully, her silver-blue skin shimmering with excitement. The Etherian Collective accepts this proposal. We have always valued knowledge and discovery over territorial expansion. We would be honored to join this initiative. Her words seemed to break a dam. Within minutes, representatives from dozens of smaller species were standing to voice their support. The Aquarians, beings of pure energy who had always been peaceful, agreed immediately. The Centaurian Federation, a group of worlds that had been bullied by larger empires for centuries, saw this as their chance for true independence. Even some of the major powers began to show interest. The Zephyrian Empire had always prided itself on scientific achievement. Lord Vextar's crystal form began to brighten as he considered the possibilities. The Zephyrian Empire, he said slowly, is willing to discuss terms for joining this initiative, but we would need guarantees that our traditional territories would remain secure. Of course, Admiral Carter replied, this isn't about taking anything away from existing civilizations. It's about giving everyone new opportunities to grow and prosper. General Thax was harder to convince. The Krillian military had built their entire culture around conquest and domination. But even he could see that the old ways weren't working anymore. With humanity's overwhelming technological advantage, the traditional system of galactic politics was obsolete. The Krillian Empire will consider this proposal, he said grudgingly, but we will need time to discuss it with our war councils. Supreme Commander Karthok was more practical. His reptilian brain had been doing calculations since Admiral Carter started speaking. The math was simple. Cooperation with humanity offered better long-term prospects than continued conflict. The Vorthan hegemony accepts, he announced. We have the largest transport fleet in the galaxy. If we're going to explore new regions, we'll need our ships to carry supplies and colonists. As more species announced their support for the Galactic Exploration Initiative, Captain Danny Clark received new orders aboard the UES Leviathan. Instead of preparing for war, his ship was being assigned to the first joint exploration mission beyond the galactic rim. His crew included not just humans, but volunteers from 12 different species. Amy Stevens was working alongside a Zephyrian, crystal engineer and an Etherian navigation specialist. The same people who might have been shooting at each other weeks earlier were now planning to explore the unknown together. The first joint fleet launched 3 months later. 50 ships from 20 different species, led by Captain Clark aboard the Leviathan, jumped into unexplored space beyond the edge of known civilization. Their mission was to map new star systems and look for worlds suitable for colonization. What they found exceeded everyone's expectations. Hundreds of habitable worlds, rich asteroid fields full of rare minerals and space phenomena that offered new insights into the nature of the universe itself. Most importantly, they found room for everyone to grow and prosper without fighting over territory. Admiral Carter stood on the bridge of the Destiny, watching reports come in from exploration fleets scattered across the galaxy. The ancient fleet that had been built in secret to defend Earth was now serving as the backbone of the largest peaceful expansion in galactic history. Captain Morrison joined her at the observation deck, looking out at Earth in the distance. "Do you think it will last?" he asked. "This new cooperation between species?" Admiral Carter smiled, the same mysterious smile she had worn weeks earlier when facing the Council's ultimatum. "Jake, humanity spent 200 years learning about fear and conflict. Now we're going to spend the next 200 years teaching the galaxy about cooperation and hope." She pulled up a star chart showing the current positions of exploration fleets. Human ships marked in blue were working alongside alien vessels marked in dozens of different colors. All of them were heading outward, away from the old territories, and old conflicts toward new worlds and new possibilities. The warships, ancient as set,